To survive the storm, she rushed into my shelter, then stopped cold at seeing a human the sky had turned black hours ago. Swirling clouds of electric blue and gray whipped across the horizon, tossing dust and shards of frozen rock into the air. The wind screamed like a living thing, carrying a smell of ozone and burnt metal. On this forsaken planet, storms did not just destroy, they ate life. Even creatures designed to survive harsh worlds trembled when a storm like this came. Nuria ran. Her four limbs moved faster than instinct should allow, muscles burning, claws scraping against the rocky terrain. She was small for her species, but fast. Her long, dark hair whipped in the wind as her pack's warning cries echoed behind her. Somewhere far above, the others struggled against the storm, their cries lost in the thunder. She had been sent ahead to scout. Ahead meant survival, or so she hoped. Lightning struck the ground near her, and the roar of it made the rocks shake beneath her feet. She rolled behind a jagged outcrop, panting, and pressed herself to the stone, claws digging in. The storm felt alive. It reached out, seeking her, testing her resolve. Her chest heaved, lungs burning. She had seen death take her companions before, quick, silent, and total. The thought sharpened her senses. The storm was unpredictable, but instinct told her where she could survive. Ahead, she spotted a glint metal. It was impossible. Nothing had survived here for decades. Nothing except perhaps a shelter. Without thinking, she leapt, scraping her hands along the surface of jagged rock and slid into the small cavity. Dust and shards of rock tumbled after her, and she landed hard, pain shooting through her side. She rolled onto her stomach, trying to catch her breath. The shelter was intact, not like the ruined bunkers she had seen across the planet, nor like the collapsed debris of abandoned mining outposts. This was different. It had a door sealed tight and walls made of layered metal plates, reinforced and worn but holding. She pressed her face to the door, listening. Nothing, no movement, no life. Only the storm's howl outside. She pushed the door open with her claws. Inside was dim, lit by soft blue panels. The air smelled faintly metallic, but it was warm. There were signs of habitation, a chair bolted to the floor, a table with a few instruments, and a small fire pit humming with energy. Someone had been here recently. Not long ago. She froze, and then she saw him. A human. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and perfectly calm. He moved with a strange confidence, checking instruments and turning dials as if the storm outside were only a minor inconvenience. His eyes were focused, calculating. His clothes were simple, reinforced with patches and thick fabric, nothing alien-techy or threatening. And yet for her species, seeing a human was almost like seeing a god, a being they thought extinct or a creature of myth. Her muscles tensed. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to attack, to hide. Humans were supposed to be dangerous, unpredictable, and utterly alien. And here he was alive, alone, on a planet that killed everything. The human paused and turned. His eyes were dark, piercing, but calm. He did not move like a predator. He did not attack. He only studied her for a moment, tilting his head as though recognizing a curiosity in the world. Nuria's heart raced. Her throat went dry. She wanted to speak, to challenge, but the words died before they left her mouth. The storm outside intensified. Wind tore at the shelter walls, shaking panels loose. Dust and debris rattled the metal plates. Lightning struck close, shaking the floor beneath her. She glanced back at the door. Leaving now meant death. Staying meant trusting a human. He spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle, carrying across the small room. "You're safe here. Sit. Warm up." His accent was strange, but the words were clear. He gestured toward a small energy fire pit in the corner. Heat radiated from it, and the warmth reached her frozen limbs almost instantly. She shivered, uncertainty battling the instinctive fear that had her coiled like a spring. Nuria moved slowly, unsure, keeping her distance. She had been trained to fight humans if needed. She had been told tales of their cunning, of their strength, of their unpredictable ways. And yet, every movement this human made said one thing: he could survive the storm because he refused to be afraid of it. That realization made her uneasy. Fear was survival. Humans ignored fear. That was unnatural. The human moved closer, holding a small metal flask. "Water, you need it." He didn't ask permission, didn't expect compliance. He simply offered it. Nuria hesitated, then stepped forward cautiously. Her hand touched the flask. The warmth burned her fingers, but not painfully. She drank. Every instinct in her body warned her against it, but the water was clean, life-giving. Her body relaxed slightly, though her mind raced. She sat on the floor, careful to keep her distance. The human didn't sit. Instead, he moved back to the instruments, adjusting them with calm, precise movements. The storm outside roared louder, but inside the shelter it felt like a buffer, a barrier she could almost trust. She dared to glance around. The shelter was small but efficient. Every surface had a purpose, nothing wasted, nothing left to chance. Survival was built into its walls, and survival was the humans alone. Minutes passed. The storm outside screamed, tearing at metal and stone. Nuria's species had evolved to survive harsh conditions, but this storm was beyond anything her kind had seen. And yet the human, he moved with purpose. He didn't fight the storm, he endured it. Each action was calm, deliberate, measured. He was dangerous, but not in the way she expected. He was dangerous because he didn't fear death. That was horrifyingly impressive. She swallowed. "Why are you here?" Her voice was sharp, clipped, but it betrayed a trace of curiosity. The human glanced at her, eyes dark but steady. "Because this planet doesn't scare me. Death doesn't scare me. Storms, they're just obstacles." He gestured vaguely to the instruments. "I fix, I survive, I wait." His voice held a strange pride, not arrogance, not challenge. Pride in endurance. She studied him. Every part of her wanted to flee. Every instinct screamed at her to attack, to run, to survive alone. And yet, for the first time in hours, maybe days, she felt something else. Hope. Survival was possible because of him. The wind screamed again, shaking the walls. Lightning struck near the shelter, throwing shadows against the walls. Nuria jumped, claws digging into the floor. The human didn't flinch. He continued working, every movement calm and precise, every breath steady. Every step purposeful. He was human, but he was more than that. He was something else. Something the galaxy had forgotten. She looked at the small pile of equipment near the wall. Tools, instruments, rations, small containers of water and food, nothing fancy, nothing advanced. Just human ingenuity, nothing she could understand fully, nothing her species had taught her to anticipate. And yet it worked, and yet it kept him alive. "Why don't you run?" she asked finally, voice softer, almost trembling. "Why fight it?" The human turned, eyes catching hers. He smiled slightly, not mockingly, not cruelly, just confidently. "Because running doesn't help, fighting blindly doesn't help, enduring, that keeps you alive, that keeps you free." He gestured at the storm outside. "Everything else, it's just noise, just wind, just fire, just chaos. Humans, we turn chaos into a path." She shivered. Words like that didn't make sense to her species. Survival meant cunning, speed, violence. Survival meant fear. Survival meant respect for power. Humans did not respect fear. They ignored it, they defied it. And in that defiance lay a strange, terrifying power. Minutes passed again. The storm howled. Lightning split the sky. Dust and rock battered the walls. The shelter groaned, but it held. And inside, Nuria watched the human, trying to understand, trying to prepare herself, trying to accept the impossible, that she might survive because of a human. Her instincts whispered warnings she could not ignore. This human was not like anything she had encountered. She did not trust him fully, she could not, but she could not deny the truth. He was alive, and he could teach her something her species had forgotten. The storm outside roared, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Inside the shelter, heat and light and human calm met alien fear and exhaustion. A fragile peace hung between them, delicate as ice, but stronger than the storm outside. And for Nuria, the huntress, the scout, the survivor, it was the first sign of hope she had felt in a long, bitter time. The human spoke again, softly this time. "Rest, eat, survive. The storm, it's not the danger, not really." He glanced at her, eyes steady. "You'll see soon enough." Nuria nodded, though she did not understand fully. She sat closer to the fire pit, warmth spreading through her. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, survival waited. And in the silence, broken only by the human's calm movements, she realized something extraordinary. The galaxy had forgotten humans. But humans had not forgotten themselves. The storm had not eased. If anything, it had grown worse. Outside the small shelter, the wind screamed like a living beast, tearing through rock and dust with impossible force. Lightning split the black sky, followed by the roar of thunder that shook the ground beneath them. Nuria, crouched near the energy fire pit, shivered. She was still exhausted from her run, from the terror of the storm, and from the shock of seeing a human alive on a planet that should have killed everything. Her claws dug into the floor as she struggled to keep her balance, her gaze locked on him. The human moved calmly, adjusting instruments and checking readings. His movements were steady, precise, unflinching in the face of chaos. He did not seem to notice the storm, the danger, or her presence beyond a fleeting glance. His composure unnerved her. Every instinct screamed that this was unnatural. No one survived storms like this. No one, and yet here he was, alive and unafraid. "You're cold," he said suddenly, his voice breaking the roar of the wind outside. "You need warmth." Without waiting for her answer, he gestured toward the fire pit and tilted the energy flame higher. The warmth hit her like a physical blow. She drew in a sharp breath, feeling the tension in her muscles ease slightly. For the first time since the storm began, she could think, really think without panic clouding her mind. "Why, help me?" she asked, her voice soft, almost unsteady. It had been instinct for her species to distrust humans, to see them as predators or monsters. She had been trained to survive alone, to trust no one, and yet here he was offering her warmth, water, and safety. "You don't know me." The human glanced at her, eyes calm and sharp. "I know survival," he said simply. "That's enough." Then, as if to demonstrate, he moved over to a wall panel and pulled a lever. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing a small cache of food and rations. "Eat," he said. "Fuel for your body. You can't survive empty." Nuria hesitated. She was used to fighting for everything, food, water, shelter. Receiving it felt wrong. And yet hunger gnawed at her stomach. Her body screamed for energy, for warmth, for something familiar. Slowly she approached, taking small rations and consuming them carefully. The warmth of the fire and the energy from the food began to revive her. Her muscles relaxed, though her mind remained alert. "You eat like prey," the human said, half observing, half commenting. "But that's okay. Prey survives differently." "You'll learn." He didn't explain, didn't lecture. He just worked, moving calmly, fixing and adjusting. Every motion was deliberate, every glance calculated. He did not fight the storm. He endured it. That was the difference. Nuria watched, fascinated despite herself. Minutes passed. The storm outside intensified. The walls of the shelter groaned under the pressure, but they held. Dust and shards of rock rattled the metal plates. Lightning struck nearby, throwing harsh shadows across the room. The human did not flinch. He walked outside briefly, shielding a panel, adjusting its alignment with the wind and rain. Nuria's jaw tightened. No other creature she had ever seen would venture outside during a storm like this. Even her kind, built for harsh worlds, would not survive that for long. Yet he moved calmly, deliberately, as if the storm were nothing more than a test. "Why aren't you afraid?" she asked quietly when he returned. Her voice trembled with disbelief. "Fear doesn't help," he said simply. "It slows you down, makes you make mistakes. Humans survive by facing what terrifies us and refusing to let it win. That's all." She frowned, trying to understand. Her species survived by cunning, by speed, by avoidance. They respected danger, they feared it, they obeyed it. And yet this human he did not fear, he endured. He adapted. He dominated the storm not by strength alone, but by refusing to be defeated by it. Nuria's mind raced. Could she survive by learning from him? Could she trust him enough to stay in this shelter in his presence? Her instincts screamed yes and no at the same time. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous, alien, but they also survived where nothing else could. The contradiction tore at her carefully trained mind. Hours passed. The storm raged on, relentless, and the human did not stop. He moved from panel to panel, checking instruments, adjusting energy flows, monitoring structural integrity. At one point, he crouched beside a broken sensor, muttering to himself in a language she didn't fully understand. But she noticed the pattern, methodical, precise, and calm. Every motion had purpose. Every breath was controlled. "You could die if you go out there," she said finally, her voice sharper than she intended. "The storm, it's stronger than anything here." He looked up, eyes catching hers. There was no fear in his gaze, only a quiet determination. "Yes, it could kill me, and it could kill you, but surviving isn't about hiding. It's about moving, adapting, learning. The storm doesn't own this planet. I do, at least for now." Nuria's ears twitched. She had not expected words like that. The human claimed mastery over something that should have destroyed him. That was impossible. And yet here he stood, alive, calm, and unbroken. The storm shifted suddenly. A pulse of wind, stronger than before, slammed into the shelter, throwing equipment across the floor. Nuria stumbled, catching herself on the edge of the fire pit. She heard metal bending, felt the shelter shudder under the assault. Her heart raced. For the first time since arriving, she feared that even this human might not survive. The human didn't panic. He moved quickly, but with purpose. He secured loose panels, reinforced weak spots, and rerouted energy through backup conduits. He worked faster than her eyes could follow, a blur of efficiency. And when a shard of metal flew past her head, he grabbed it midair, spun it, and used it to brace a weakened wall. She gasped, unable to believe what she saw. He was fighting a storm that could kill thousands of her kind, and winning. When the shelter finally stabilized, the human stood in the center, chest heaving slightly, sweat and rain mixing on his brow. He looked at her, expression calm, almost casual. "Storms don't last forever," he said. "Neither do predators. You adapt or you die. Simple." Nuria's mouth opened to speak, then closed. No words could capture the magnitude of what she had seen. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, a species nearly wiped out in the galaxy's wars. And yet here one was, standing alive in the middle of a storm that could shred stone and steel alike. She realized something she hadn't allowed herself to think before. Humans are not weak, not even close. She moved closer, cautiously, drawn by the warmth of the fire and the strange pull of curiosity. "Teach me," she whispered. "Teach me how you survive." The human looked at her, eyes narrowing slightly. "Not teaching," he said. "Watching. Learning, survival isn't something you can teach. You live it or you die. You understand?" She nodded slowly. She could feel the truth of it. She had survived before, yes, but never like this. Never by witnessing a human endure what no other creature could. The storm continued, relentless outside. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the ground, and the wind screamed like a living thing. But inside the small shelter, Nuria felt something she hadn't felt in years: safety. Not guaranteed, not absolute, but possible. Because humans did not merely survive storms, humans defied them. As the night stretched on, she watched him. The way he moved, the way he thought, the way he survived. She began to understand a small piece of the truth. Humans thrived where everything else perished. They did not merely endure, they claimed survival as their own. And as dawn approached, the storm's roar lessened slightly, revealing the twisted, shattered landscape outside. She realized something else. She was not safe yet. The storm was far from over. And the galaxy, if it knew this human existed, would come looking. But for now, for these few fragile hours, she could rest. And she could watch. And she could learn. Humans were not just survivors. Humans were the future. And she was about to find out what that truly meant. The storm had grown angrier. Lightning struck closer now, tearing through the blackened sky and splitting jagged rocks like they were paper. The wind shrieked against the shelter's walls, rattling the metal plates and sending dust and debris swirling through the air outside. Inside, Nuria crouched near the fire pit, watching the human. He moved calmly, deliberately, as if nothing outside could touch him. And yet she could feel the shelter shudder under the assault. The storm was not just wind and lightning. It was alive, vicious, and hungry. Small cracks appeared along the walls, metal panels bending and twisting under pressure. Pieces of debris flew through gaps, hitting the floor with loud clinks and clangs. Nuria's heart raced. She had survived storms before, yes, but never one like this. Nothing alive could survive it. And yet the human moved as if it were a puzzle, each strike of the storm a challenge to solve rather than a threat to fear. Suddenly, a jagged spike of lightning hit the side of the shelter. A section of the wall buckled, panels snapping inward. Dust and fragments rained down. The human reacted instantly, slamming a brace into place to hold the panel. A shard of metal flew past Nuria's head. Reflexively, she dodged. The shelter groaned and shivered as the storm tried to tear it apart. "Stay down," the human barked, voice steady but commanding. "If we get hit directly, the walls will fail." Nuria crouched lower, her body tense. She had expected the human to run, to hide, to panic, but he did neither. Instead, he moved faster, working tools, reinforcing weak spots and guiding her. "Hand me that brace," he said, pointing to a metal bar that had come loose. Her instincts urged hesitation. One wrong move and she could be impaled, crushed, or worse. But the human's calm confidence was contagious. She handed him the bar. In seconds, he secured it, keeping the shelter from collapsing entirely. She blinked. She had always believed survival meant avoiding danger, running when necessary, and striking first. But this human, he faced danger head-on and survived. It was a different kind of strength, one that did not rely on speed or stealth. It relied on refusal to be defeated. A sudden, high-pitched screech cut through the roar of the storm. Nuria stiffened. She recognized the sound: storm creatures. They were small, swift, and deadly, adapted to the chaos of this world. Normally, she could handle them. Her claws, speed, and instincts made her a predator. But the storm made them unpredictable, erratic, and they were approaching the shelter. The human did not flinch. He moved toward a wall panel and slid it open, revealing a small compartment filled with improvised weapons. One looked like a short rod with glowing tips. "Grab one," he said without looking at her. "We'll need it." Nuria hesitated. Her instincts told her this was dangerous. She had fought storm creatures before, but never under such conditions. She took the rod, feeling its weight, noting the way it hummed with contained energy. The human nodded at her and took another. The screeches grew louder. Something slammed into the shelter, a storm creature, small but strong, its claws tearing at the reinforced metal. Sparks flew as it struck. The human reacted instantly, swinging his rod with precise timing. The creature shrieked and fell back, stunned, then attempted another strike. Nuria followed suit, her claws slicing the air, striking with precision born of years of hunting. For a moment they fought side by side. The storm outside howled, the shelter shaking with each gust, each strike, each clash. Nuria realized something astonishing. This human was not just surviving. He was thriving in chaos. Every strike he made was calculated, every move anticipating the storm and the creatures. He adapted faster than she could, read the situation with uncanny clarity, and acted with precision that no ordinary soldier of her species could match. She felt a strange surge of emotion, fear mixed with admiration, disbelief mixed with awe. Humans were supposed to be fragile, nearly extinct, a species forgotten by the galaxy. And yet, here was one alive, fighting creatures and a storm that would have killed thousands of her kind. The storm intensified further. Lightning struck closer, shaking the floor, and one panel near the ceiling gave way. Debris rained down, narrowly missing both of them. Nuria dove aside, claws scraping the floor. The human grabbed a loose beam and slammed it into the wall, reinforcing the damaged section in a single, fluid motion. Sparks flew, the air smelled of burnt metal, and yet he did not pause, not once. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed meaningless as the storm raged and the battle continued. Nuria fought alongside him, not as a subordinate, but as a student. She watched, learned, and adapted to his methods. She realized that survival was more than instinct. It was strategy, patience, and refusal to give in to fear. Finally, as the storm weakened slightly, the creatures retreated. The shelter had survived, battered and scarred, but intact. The human leaned against a wall, breathing heavily, his eyes catching hers. "Not bad," he said quietly. "You're quick, you learn fast." Nuria nodded, still panting, still trembling. "You fight differently," she said. "You don't just survive, you dominate." The human's lips curved into a faint smile. "Dominate," he repeated. "No, I survive. And when necessary, I fight, but never blindly. Fear is natural, but it doesn't get to decide your fate. You do." She studied him, his calm in the eye of chaos, his confidence, his sheer refusal to be beaten. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. She had survived storms, predators, and battles. She had trained all her life, and yet this human had changed her understanding of survival in a single night. Outside, the storm began to die down, the first faint light of dawn breaking through the clouds. The air was still heavy, filled with debris and electricity, but it was calmer. Nuria looked at the human. For the first time, she felt hope. "Why stay here?" she asked, voice softer now. "Why not leave? This planet is deadly. Others survive. You could go elsewhere." He shook his head. "No, humans, we don't leave places just because they're dangerous. We face danger, we claim it. This planet, it's alive, it's harsh. But it's mine as long as I endure, you understand?" She nodded slowly. She did, in some way, understand. Her species survived by avoidance, by cunning, by fear. Humans survived by facing the impossible and refusing to yield. The difference was staggering. Nuria realized something else. She was no longer just a survivor in this storm. She was a witness, a student. And perhaps something more. She was learning what it meant to survive like a human. The human moved to a console, checking readings of the shelter's integrity and the storm's intensity. He muttered under his breath, adjusting panels and recalibrating energy flows. Every action was calm, deliberate, precise. Every breath controlled. He was alive not because the storm had spared him, but because he had mastered it. And Nuria, exhausted, bruised, and weary, realized that for the first time in her life, she had hoped that she could survive not alone, but with him. Hours turned into the weak light of dawn. The storm outside had passed enough to reveal the twisted landscape, a world scarred, broken, but still standing. Rocks lay splintered, dust hung in the air, and the sky was a faint gray. Nurya stepped to the doorway and looked outside, scanning the horizon. The storm had taken its toll, but her life, was still possible. The human joined her. He didn't speak at first. He simply looked at the horizon, then at her. "The galaxy thinks humans are gone," he said quietly. "They're wrong. We survive where others die. We endure where others falter. That is our strength." She nodded, feeling the truth in his words. Humans were not mythical. They were not extinct. They were alive, fierce, and unstoppable, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Nurya realized, too, that this human had changed something inside her. Not just the way she saw survival, but the way she saw herself. Fear no longer ruled her completely. She had learned a small part of human endurance. And in that knowledge, she felt a spark that could grow into something greater. "Teach me more," she whispered. "Show me how to survive like you." The human looked at her, eyes dark and serious, then smiled faintly. "Not teach," he said again. "Live, watch, endure. Learn, that's how humans survive." She nodded again. She would watch. She would endure. And perhaps someday she could survive as humans did, unyielding, unstoppable, and unafraid of the storms of the galaxy. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving silence and a broken world. Inside, two unlikely allies prepared for the challenges ahead. One was alien, trained to survive harsh worlds. The other was human, trained to dominate them. Together, they had endured the impossible. And the galaxy had yet to see what humans were truly capable of. The storm had passed, leaving a battered and broken world in its wake. Dust hung in the air, and jagged rocks were scattered across the blackened landscape. Nurya stepped out of the shelter cautiously, her claws scraping against the rough terrain. She had survived the storm with the human, barely, but survival was not the same as safety. The planet was alive in ways that could still kill her in an instant. The human stood near the entrance of the shelter, adjusting a solar panel and inspecting the structural integrity of the walls. Despite the destruction outside, his movements were calm, precise, and deliberate. He had faced the storm and the creatures that came with it, and he had endured. Now he faced the aftermath with the same quiet determination. Nurya watched him closely. She had learned more in the past hours than in years of hunting and scouting for her species. Humans did not simply survive. They adapted, endured, and thrived in conditions that would crush others. She had seen him fight, seen him think faster than her mind could process, and seen him take risks that no sane being would consider. And yet, he had survived. "We can't stay here forever," Nurya said, her voice low. She had spent years in survival training, and the instinct to prepare for future threats was strong. "The storm is gone, but other dangers remain. Predators, the environment, my people." The human nodded without turning. "I know, but leaving isn't always the answer. You survive by facing the world, not by running from it. That's how humans endure. That's how we thrive." Nurya's gaze hardened. Her mind went to her species, the ones she had left behind during the storm. They would expect her to return to report, to follow orders, and they would be furious to find a human alive here. Humans were not supposed to exist. Humans were a myth, a story told to scare children. And yet here he was, alive, strong, unyielding. The thought burned in her chest. Could she really introduce him to her people? Could she convince them that humans were not the monsters of legend? Or would they see him as a threat to be destroyed? Her decision was made when the first signal beacon blinked on her communicator. She had sent an emergency signal during the storm, hoping her team would track her. Now they had arrived, or at least the response had come. The screen on her device showed multiple ships descending from the sky, their engines cutting through the dust and debris like knives. "They're here," she whispered, her heart pounded. "My people, they're coming." The human glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. Trust was not something she gave lightly. It had been earned through fire, storm, and survival. And yet she had already learned that humans were different. They did not run from danger. They did not hide from fear. They endured and they survived. "I do," she said finally. He nodded. "Then let's see if your people can understand that too." The ships landed with a roar, kicking up dust and shaking the ground. Figures emerged, tall, sleek, and angular, her species' standard form. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning the environment with precision. Their movements were coordinated, deliberate, and intimidating. They had come to rescue her, but they had also come to assert control. Nurya stepped forward, placing herself between the human and her people. Her claws flexed, muscles tense. "Stop!" she commanded. "He is not a threat." The lead figure tilted its head, glowing eyes narrowing. "A human," it said, voice sharp and questioning. "Impossible. Humans are extinct. All reports indicate eradication decades ago." "He is alive," Nuria said firmly. "He survived the storm. He saved the shelter. He saved me." The lead figure took a cautious step forward, scanning the human. The alien warriors around it tensed, prepared to strike. "Verification required," the leader said. "If this human poses any threat, it must be neutralized." The human remained calm. He did not flinch, did not raise a weapon. He simply stood tall, meeting the alien's gaze with quiet confidence. "I am no threat," he said evenly. "I survived the storm because I endure. I survived because I refuse to be defeated. That is all." Nuria's people hesitated. The alien leader's eyes flicked between her and the human. The reports they had received painted humans as dangerous, unpredictable, and extinct. Yet here was one, alive and unbroken, standing in the middle of a storm-ravaged world. The contradiction was undeniable. The lead figure raised a hand, signaling the others to lower their weapons slightly. "Explain," it demanded. Nuria took a deep breath. She recounted the storm, the creatures, and the human's actions, how he had survived, how he had endured, and how he had protected her. She spoke of his calm, his intelligence, and his refusal to yield to fear. The alien warriors listened, their glowing eyes narrowing, then widening. There were murmurs, questioning sounds, and low growls. Some of them stepped back, uncertainty etched into their posture. The leader's gaze never left the human. "And you claim this being is harmless?" the leader asked. "Yes," Nuria said firmly. "He is not my enemy, he is not a predator, he is human, and humans survive where others die." A tense silence followed. The storm outside had faded, leaving a quiet, broken world. Dust swirled lazily in the air, and the heat from the fire pit spread warmth throughout the shelter. The alien leader considered her words, its posture rigid, calculating. Finally, it spoke. "Verification required. If this human's abilities are genuine, they must be observed." "We cannot risk error," the human nodded slowly. "Observation is fine," he said calmly, "but you will not find danger here. I survive, I endure, that is all you need to know." Nurtya's people exchanged glances. Some were skeptical, others curious, and a few appeared afraid. They had trained to dominate, to survive, to control, yet here was a human who required no control, who answered to no fear, who endured what they could not. The leader gestured toward the human. "Demonstrate your survival." The human glanced at Nuria, then at the leader. Without hesitation, he moved to the edge of the shelter and gestured toward the ruined landscape outside. "See for yourself," he said. "This world is alive, dangerous, and chaotic. I survive here, I endure here, nothing else matters." Nuria's people stepped outside cautiously. They saw the jagged rocks, the scorched earth, the twisted remnants of the storm. And they saw the human standing amidst it all, calm, unbroken, unafraid. A murmur ran through them. Some whispered of legends, others of impossible feats. The human did not speak. He did not move unnecessarily. He simply stood, a living testament to survival. The lead figure's eyes flicked between Nuria and the human. "This being defies expectations," it said finally. "It survives where others would perish. Its presence here challenges everything we know." "Yes," Nuria said softly, "humans endure, they survive where others die, they do not obey fear, they do not yield to chaos, that is their power." The leader's posture shifted slightly. The weapons of the surrounding warriors lowered. Skepticism remained, but hesitation and curiosity replaced aggression. They were beginning to understand, perhaps for the first time, that humans were not myths, not extinct, not weak. They were something the galaxy had underestimated. The human turned to Nuria. "You trust them?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "I do, but they will test us, test you. They will want proof that you are different." He smiled faintly. "Proof comes from survival, from endurance. From action, not words." The lead figure took a deep breath. "Very well," it said. "We will observe, but if this being proves a threat, it will be neutralized." Nuria's chest tightened. She had already seen the human survive the storm, fight creatures, and endure impossible conditions. She knew he was capable of anything. She also knew that if her people attacked, the consequences would be catastrophic, for them and for him. But the human only stood calmly, meeting the leader's gaze without fear. "I will not be defeated," he said simply, "and I will not harm those who do not harm me." Nuria felt a surge of pride. She had seen many warriors in her life, many hunters and fighters. None had impressed her like this human. He was not just strong or skilled. He was unyielding, a force of nature that no storm, no creature, no species could easily challenge. The lead figure studied him, then slowly lowered its weapon. "We will watch," it said finally. "And we will learn." Nuria stepped closer to the human. "They will accept you," she said softly. "Eventually, but you must show them the way humans survive." He nodded. "Then we begin," he said calmly. "The galaxy will see what humans are capable of, and it will remember." The sun rose slowly over the shattered landscape, casting pale light across the broken world. Dust swirled in the wind, carrying the scent of destruction and renewal. And in the small shelter, two unlikely allies prepared for what was to come. One alien, one human, both ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy would throw at them. Nurya realized something profound. Humans were not just survivors. They were teachers, warriors, and legends in the making, and she had been given the rare chance to witness it firsthand. As the first rays of light touched the horizon, she knew this was only the beginning. The storm had tested them. The creatures had challenged them. And now the galaxy itself would judge them. But together, she and the human would endure. Together, they would survive. And together, they would show the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated.